So after 3 consecutive wins in a row, here's the 5 things that we learned after Man United 4, Brighton 2. Number 1, we won because we started prioritizing our midfield. And this didn't start today, this didn't start last week, it started all the way against Sunderland, which is why we suddenly saw our team actually starting to perform against Sunderland. Now the acid test was both the Anfield game and the game here today against Brighton. And what we did right, so instead of leaving holes in the midfield, this time we were in more of a 5-4-1 instead of a 4-1-5, which is what we normally see when we transition. With Casemiro doing his job, with Fernandes not stepping out of position too often, this allowed Cunha and Bomo Sesko to press from the front. And guess what happens when your front three are able to press now because they don't have to cover the gaps in midfield? What we can do is essentially pin a team like Brighton who do want to actually press. We can pin them back into their own box. And which is what we saw on countless occasions yesterday. Because you had Baliba and Ayari who are usually very good at being press resistant. We had them panicking up to the point where Baliba got a yellow card and after that he did not look like the same player. Now ideally in the Premier League you'd want to see a 4-5-1 because that gives you an extra man in the midfield. But even with a 5-4-1, one thing we see is 9 men behind the ball defending. And what that gives you is a structure that Bournemouth have, structure that Palace have, structure that all the good teams in the Premier League do have. And that is just defensive solidarity and you build on that. Because when you have attackers like Mbeumo, Cunha and Sesko, the rest of the team is not even an issue anymore. Because if they are doing the defensive work, these three are going to just score the goals for you, create the goals for you. And then when you have Ahmad as well, you have enough creation options anyways. Now, the game really changed when we had Casemiro go off. That's when we saw a few substitutions which probably didn't work. And the game was pretty much won in the midfield, which normally we lose it in the midfield, but this time we won it in the midfield. And why? That was because of Casemiro and Fernandes actually maintaining defensive discipline and positional discipline. Number 2, confidence and consistency from this point is very important. So what I'm talking about is we've seen under Ten Hag before where he started trying to play his own possession style. Again, funnily enough, at Old Trafford against Brighton on his first ever game. And we tried to play possession and control. It failed horribly. And the second game, we played Brentford and we lost 4-0. And that's the game, right? The following game when we played Liverpool at Old Trafford, that's when we changed our play style completely to prioritize more of a defensive structure first and then we counter-attack them essentially. And that worked all the way up to February, up to March, which is why we ended up getting the Carabao Cup. We reached the FA Cup final and we got a 3rd place in the Premier League. But the following season, in that pre-season onwards, we saw that Ten Hag tried to adopt this new style. And that's ultimately what cost him his job. Because yes, he was versatile at the start, but then he reverted to what wasn't working in the start. And he did not adapt according to the players. The players saw that first system, right? When we prioritized Rashford on the wing and that was our main outlet, that worked. But then when you revert back to a system that does not suit anybody and you leave holes in the midfield, you're going to get exposed. Amorim was doing the exact same thing for 8 months. So anybody who's telling me that we should have trusted Amorim from the start, well, he's changed his playstyle completely to what it was. And he was being stubborn for 8 months, not changing anything. But now finally he's prioritizing the midfield and now we're seeing the results pay off. It wasn't rocket science. You prioritize the midfield and you suddenly see results. So what he was essentially doing and what we saw in earlier games this season was that our 8s were bombing forward. So when they bomb forward, what you'd want is somebody to cover those spaces. Sometimes in some formations, it's the 10s who drop back and then the 8s go forward and then the space is still occupied. If not, you have one centre-back step in, maybe 1 8 step back, and then you still have that number in midfield. But what we saw many times was when you put, let's say, for example, Ugarte and Bruno Fernandes. Thing is, Fernandes wants to attack and Ugarte will just press and he'll stay out of position sometimes and he won't retreat just back in time. So when you have 2 midfielders who really are stepping out of position for whatever reason, you don't have the defensive discipline and you don't have the numbers to cover when they counter you. Playing long as well from St. Lomans, that's working so far. If we want to change that, I don't think it's a good idea. If you want to play from the back and try to be a progressive team, always play to your players' strengths. And what we are seeing right now is you play the ball long, right, into Mbeumo, into Cunha or Sesko, and they will bring the ball down, and then we can transition directly. We can bypass the midfield for now. So at least until the summer, at least until we get another midfielder in, or maybe two, do not play through the center, do not play from the back, because that's just going to attract unnecessary pressure. Number 3, we need to upgrade that left-hand side. Whenever it's either Dalo or Dorgu, whoever we play there, they're a liability, especially Dorgu. That was one of the worst cameo substitute appearances I've seen in a while. He's the one who gave the ball initially away, right? We had the ball from a corner and we could have sustained pressure there, but Dorgu loses the ball. And then on the run back, he loses his man, and unnecessarily, when Laumans got the ball either ways, Dorgu pushed the man over and then he got a free kick. However, that one foul nearly cost us the entire game, because momentum was strongly with Brighton till Mbeumo scored. From the point where we conceded that free kick all the way to Mbeumo scoring, it was all Brighton. In that 20-minute spell, if we had drawn, we'd have been like, yeah, it was coming. Because the last 20 minutes was telling us we were screwing up. And had Dorgu not messed up there, who's to say we wouldn't have got a 4 or 5, because the game was going that way. And then Dalo, we've seen what he did at Anfield as well. He was disappointing. So whoever we have on that left-hand side is a liability. So I counter you with another chance. Why not put Mason Mount there? Simply because he's got the legs, right? We need that extra pressing demon from that side, because that's the only thing that was lacking in yesterday's performance. Apart from that left wing-back spot, everybody was doing their role. And if you can fix that one spot up, right, what we can see is that our team can progress as a team, and then teams are really going to fear us. So fix up that left-hand side. That's the next thing we got to do. If it means putting in a runner like Mason Mount or Ugarte, you know what, maybe we might just have to do that. Number 4, drop zonal marking on corners. This is something that we've seen under Ten Hag, we've seen even under Ole, and now we've seen under Amorim as well. We always try to mark zonally. What does zonal marking mean? Essentially, you have one defender who picks up a certain space. So whoever the player might be, right, whether that's player 1 or player 2, whoever player comes into that zone, you're marking that player at that time. So let's say that the attack tries to be funny and tries to mess around. There's a chance that we can concede instantly, because now we don't know who is in which zone, and that's how we panic. Just shift back, revert back to man-to-man marking. There's a reason why it was in trend for so long. Just man-to-man mark, pick up your man, and we can actually move on with it. Because the reason why we concede so many goals is because we try to do the zonal marking system, but then never works because our players just lose their man. And when it comes to the zone, we don't know whose man is whose. And Zirkzee was at fault for that goal as well. For that second goal from Brighton, had Zirkzee picked up his man, we would have probably not conceded the second one. And then maybe we counter, we score for 1. And then that's a comfortable win from there. Number 5, dropping in Zirkzee and Mino, especially when they are unfit, into a system that is against Brighton. A Brighton side that we know are very notorious for the pressing. And when they are good at pressing, when we have Zirkzee and Mino who are completely off it, he was still losing balls where it wasn't necessary. And Mino lost a ball in a crucial spot, which we could have considered right then, and it could have been 3-2 much before it was 3-2. The thing is, we see that when we play Zirkzee or Mino, especially when they're unfit, you don't do that against Brighton at Old Trafford when you had control. Well, let's say semi-control, because Brighton was slowly coming back into the game. We did have the game though, because Casemiro was just marshalling that midfield. But now you take them off, you put Mino on and you put Zirkzee on, who haven't played in how long, right? The most minutes that both of them have got are like 30 minutes per game. So dropping them into this Brighton game was not a smart idea. That was probably one thing you should take away from Amorim, that he did not use the subs as well as he could have, because Dorgu didn't work out, Mino did not work out, Zirkzee did not work out, and Ugarte, you could argue, didn't work out. So basically, he shouldn't have taken Casemiro off. Maybe it's a thing with he can't play 90 minutes, especially against a Brighton side our entire game was about energy. And risking Casemiro right now was probably not a good idea. Maybe that was Amorim's thinking. But we have to think, we need that control. We need to have sealed that deal, right? By the time it's 3-0, there should be no goals. They should be deflated by then, and we just play a passing game and we just close it down at 3-0. But that wasn't allowed. So the next thing you got to see is, when we're controlling a game, don't take off your main controller. So Casemiro had to stay on, and maybe we would have closed the game right then had we done that. So what do you guys think? what your 5 things that you took away from this game. Comment that all down below, and I'll see you all in the next one.